Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got an exciting announcement. After talking about it for years, the press release has just gone out, so you'll start seeing news reports on it in the near future. Battleship New Jersey is going to Drydock at some point in the next year or so. The state of New Jersey, in their budget that was approved and signed by Governor Murphy on June 30th, approved Battleship New Jersey to get $5 million towards a major dry docking effort. That is approximately half of the money that we think that we will need to complete the full scope of work of the project. So, we've talked a lot about dry docking in the past. Quick recap, an active duty ship will be dry docked every 2 or 3 years. They're in pretty constant use. Museum ships, or inactive ships, are recommended by NAVSEA to be dry docked every 20 years. This comes from Chapter 50, the Inactive Ship Maintenance book, which is one of my textbooks that we plan all of our restoration work off of. Battleship New Jersey was last in dry dock between 1990 and 1991 when she was being decommissioned for the most recent time. So, it has been about 32 years since Battleship New Jersey went into dry dock. What do we need to do in dry dock? First off, a new coat of paint hasn't been applied to the bottom of the ship since 1990. So that is my entire lifespan. We haven't painted the underside of the ship. Topside, a coating of paint will last about 10 years. Below water, the really expensive immersion grade coatings, some of them that we've used on other museum ships have lasted 20 years. We're getting to the point where they'll last 30 years or longer. But the coatings that were put on in 1990, 1991 probably are at the end of their usable life. Not only are the coatings an issue, but you start to get marine growth on the hull of your ship. Unfortunately, being here in freshwater on the Delaware River, it's not as bad as, say, some other museum ships. Notably, Missouri preceded us in dry dock about a decade ago. In 2009, they went into dry dock in Pearl Harbor. Being in that warm salt water, they had a lot of underwater growth. We don't have nearly that much, but there is certainly some. And so these plants growing on the bottom of the ship dig their roots into the paint and cause the coatings to fail even faster. Finally, cleaning off the hull, painting the hull, we're really worried about galvanic corrosion. The pier has electricity, the ship has electricity. That is going to leak into the water and cause the paint to pop off, and cause the ship to sort of act like a battery and rust even faster. We have an impressed current cathodic protection system built into the seabed. We have a passive cathodic protection system that was installed by the Navy in 1991. The passive system we know is not working. The passive system is about 1,300 23-pound zinc anodes bolted to the bottom of the ship. The zinc will sacrifice itself for the steel. We've done a dive survey of the hull earlier this year, and the zincs are not corroding at all. Why aren't the zincs corroding at all? Because we're in fresh water, you're supposed to use aluminum. When the ship was decommissioned in 91, they put zincs on her because she was going to Bremerton, Washington, in salt water. We took her from Bremerton, Washington around 2000, brought her here up to freshwater in the Delaware River, and we haven't dry docked. The zincs need to be replaced with aluminum anode. Finally, there are some known class issues, things that we know from looking at the dry docking report of Missouri, things we know from looking at dry docking reports for other American battleships, things we know from looking at the active reports from these ships when they were in service. Now, they're not doing the same job. Things aren't going to be the same as when they were in service. However, we know that the extreme bow of the ship, the peak tanks, where the paravane was attached, are known corrosion areas. We know that around the propeller shafts at the back of the ship will likely corrode. And we know that there are well over 100, probably north of 130 blanks on the underwater hull where there were various sea chests, openings in the bottom of the ship to allow stuff in. So the Navy welds over those with mild steel plates, Depending on where they are, it might be mild steel welded on armor, it might be a bronze opening, there's all sorts of dissimilar metal corrosion potentially happening under there, which is part of what the zincs, the anodes are supposed to help with. But remember, those aren't doing their job. So we are worried that there might be an issue there. We fixed a leak with a temporary patch before I even started working here. We're talking about 6-8 years ago. That is the only leak in the hull of the ship that has been discovered since the ship was turned into a museum. But we are very closely watching the dry dockings of other ships. We're very closely watching what's happening on other ships. As you're aware, back in April of 2020, USS The Sullivans had a water intrusion issue that caused her to partially sink. We went out and visited her and saw the work that they're doing. As you're aware, Battleship Texas has had a series of severe water intrusion problems. She was last in dry dock around 1990, went about the same length of time as we did, and now has to have a major part of her underwater hull replaced for tens of millions of dollars. Remember, the state of Texas originally gave them $35 million, and they recently got some more money to extend the project out. So, if we wait until holes start to develop in the ship, our $8 to $10 million dry docking project doubles, triples. Like, we become Texas very quickly if we put this off. So looking at everything that's happening elsewhere in the fleet, our board of directors, our local politicians that support us, our museum staff have all been planning this project for a couple of years at this point. And now, through the advocacy of some of our key supporters like Governor Phil Murphy, Senator Nielsen Cruz Perez, who submitted the bill that got us the funding, Senator Singleton, Senator Beach, Majority Leader Greenwald, Assemblyman Moen and Spearman, and Camden County Commission Director Lou Capelli, all representatives of our local New Jersey area, put in a lot of work along with our Board of Trustees and our staff to make this happen. And now we're halfway there with the funding and ready to move on to the next step. We're into the hard planning phase where we're actually able to pay people to do the work. We're not just collecting estimates anymore. I will tell you, right now we're looking at about a 60-day yard period, which means that the ship could be closed somewhere between 2 to 3 months between the work we have to do to get it ready and the work we have to do in the yard. And then the work we have to do to get it ready again when we bring her back. So she will likely be closed 2 to 3 months when we do the dry docking. These dates will be announced well in advance. We are planning to go into dry dock number 3 at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. That is the dry dock we were towed into on December 7th, 1942, the day we were launched, so that the ship could be completed. That is the dry dock we were in 1968 to be reactivated for Vietnam. We know it can support an Iowa-class battleship. We have a lot of history with that yard, and we're excited to go back there. It's something of a mini homecoming. And when are we planning on going? A lot of it involves when the yard is available, when they have the room to take us. Our best case scenario right now is we would be in January, February 2024. However, they have availability as recently as late this fall. And if we're not able to get everything lined up, we'll talk about this in a future video, probably next week. We have to remove some parts of the ship. We have to get a crane in to remove the gangway. There's all sorts of work that we have to do. If we're not able to line everything up perfectly within our ideal window, it might get pushed back to next fall. We're trying to arrange it so that we're in dry dock during the slowest time of the year. We will lose 2 months of revenue, and we want to make it the slowest 2 months. So in the fall, when the kids go back to school, we're pretty slow. And then in the winter, January, February, is when we're real slow. So we're shooting for those. But if the yard calls us and says, hey, we've only got availability in June during the height of your busy season, well, we got to do this work. That's when we're going. So what is Dry Docking New Jersey going to look like? You'll have to wait till next week's video to see. So you guys have been supporting the channel, supporting the museum for years. You're interested in how you can support towards the dry docking. First off, there's a donate button in the link in the description below. Now that we've announced that we're going to Drydock, we are starting to hardcore fundraise to make up the rest of the money. We are working with Camden County to get a large part of the remaining money settled up, and then that will just leave a couple $1 million, which essentially, if we don't raise it, we don't get to do everything we want to do, but we should still be able to go to the yard. If you do help us raise it, then we're able to do everything that we need to do so that this ship doesn't need to be dry docked again for decades. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and commenting, and doing all that stuff so that more people see this video and find out about the museum. What would you like to see us talk about in future dry docking videos? Let us know in the comment section down below. We're hoping to release a video like this every week as we have news. So this one's going live on Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we've got a video already set to talk more about what we're going to do in dry dock and some of the first steps. But what are some questions you have? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State. This year, we're getting a lot of operating support from them. And also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate the support. It allows us to do these critical but expensive projects that allow us to preserve the ship indefinitely. And again, you can support us by liking, sharing, subscribing, letting people know about us, and we really appreciate your support. See you next time.